Elements and Principles tile. So this is going to be your first mini project, also known as a quick build for this class. It will give you a chance to get to know clay, how it works, and some very basic clay building techniques. So for this project, you will be randomly given 2 elements and 1 principle. With that, you're going to be designing a tile that uses all 3 together. So as far as what it is you create with it, it is totally up to you as long as you're using the 2 elements and 1 principle. The tile itself will be 4 by 5 inches once it's glazed. The goal for this is that it is going to be used in a wall mural. So when you're designing your piece, remember that it will be out in the hall in public. Okay? Because it is a tile, that is going to be next to other students' tiles. So do not go beyond the tile itself. You have to stay within your 4 by 5 inches. With the project, you are required to include carved areas and applique pieces. So we'll talk about what those are in a little bit. As far as your design, as I said, it's very, very open-ended. However, no letters, no numbers, no logos, and no copyright images. Make sure it is your own original work. So here are some student examples that show the tiles. So for this tile, the student had negative space and line as their 2 elements, and the principle was asymmetrical balance. So looking at this, for negative space, the student decided to create this kind of yellow bridge that has that opening underneath it. Okay, so that's creating that negative space. For line, they did carving in the surface with this kind of zigzaggy, jagged line, but then they also have these yellow organic swirly lines that they put in. For asymmetrical balance, if you look at it, if you try to cut it in half and see if it's the same, you can't do it. So they did a really nice job creating asymmetrical balance. This student, their elements were line and geometric shape. Their principle was focal point. So the line, really easy to see. They have the blue and green stripes throughout. Okay, just straight down, 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 down. As far as geometric shape, they used the circle in the form of a sphere. Okay, so they kind of did a geometric form. So they have these spheres kind of placed within the very center of the tile. For focal point, the student did this in a couple of ways. The first one is color. Okay, just simply making one of the spheres this bright red color, it draws your eyes to it. Okay? But also the size is a lot larger than everything else. Okay? And then framing wise, your eye is also naturally drawn to the center because of that frame. So they did focal point in a couple of different ways. As far as techniques, they did carving by putting lines in between the stripes, but then they also carved out this nice divot in the middle for the spheres to sit in place. And then for the applique, they added a smaller mini tile and then appliqued all the spheres in the center. So just some more examples just so you can see. Color-wise, kind of what options you have, and just different ways to kind of showcase. With your overall design, it does not have to look like anything. So the goal isn't to make, a portrait or a nature scene. It can just be a design, just lines and shapes and textures. Okay, so it's really up to you. So don't think that it has to look like something specific. And the options are really endless with this. So one of the requirements is that you include carving within your tile. So carving is taking away material, okay? Or you can also press into the clay. So the idea is that you have areas that are pressed inward, whether it's by taking it away or by simply pressing. Okay, so here are some examples that really showcase the carving. So you'll be able to use various clay tools to create different carving techniques and different looks. So depending on what you use, you can have either very delicate carving like the image on the left, where you have these very fine lines that are kind of swirled and all that throughout. Or you can carve out larger areas like the piece on the right. So the brown brick areas are more solidly carved out. Here we have kind of a mixture of carved lines and then whole sections that are carved out. Applique. So applique is the other requirement, and this is adding to the surface. It's a way to create height. Okay. So you can see from the profile view, we have the tile itself, and then you have this part that's sticking out off of it. Okay, so that would be this flower. Okay, that's kind of just sticking up off of the tile. Okay. So it's just adding additional clay on top. And there's a very specific way that we do applique with clay that you'll see in the demo. So with the applique, you can have maybe at most 3 layers of height. So the piece on the right, this is kind of the maximum one as far as height-wise, because you have to keep in mind this is going to be hanging up on a wall. So we don't want it to be, protruding out too much, because it could be a safety hazard and all of that. But as long as you have, a little bit, 1 layer of applique, you'll be in good shape. Okay. So with that being said, I have a few examples of pieces that have way too much of that height, but also the overall design doesn't really work for the wall mural aspect. So with this piece, height-wise, way too far out. So if this was hanging up on a wall, students walking through the halls could accidentally bump into it and it could break. But also if you look at the design, it would be hanging on the bottom of it. Okay, so if you tilt your heads to the side, that's how you would see it. So for a wall aspect, not very successful, because you would lose the aspect of the piece itself. These kind of the same thing. They're way too tall, but also, the design-wise, if you tilt your head to the side, wouldn't really work. The jack-o'-lantern on the left, this student went ahead and made kind of a lid for the jack-o'-lantern, so that definitely would not stay put once it's hung on the wall. So keep in mind, wall, it's going to get hung. So you don't want it too tall, and then your design, you want it to work as though it were hanging. So from here, you're going to have time to sketch. So each of you will be given a random slip of paper with 2 elements and 1 principle that you will be using for your design. You're going to sketch out 3 different options. 3 different options. And the reason why we have you do multiple sketches of different options is because sometimes your last idea might be your best one. And with sketches, as we learned in the ceramic process, some things might look great on paper, but physically with clay, you might not be able to do it, or it might be too complex for the level you're at. So having options is good. Okay? So on a piece of paper, using pen or pencil. I personally suggest pencil so you can erase. You'll just draw out 3 different ideas. With the sketches, you're not being graded on the quality of the sketches, so you don't have to be a fabulous drawer for this. It's really just to get your ideas out there. With your sketches, I would also include which areas you're planning to carve and what you're planning to be the applique. So with this example of sketches that we have here, maybe with this top left one with the circles, okay, maybe all the circles I would mark as being my applique. And maybe in all that in-between space, I could carve in some sort of design. Okay, so write that out. Also, you can start thinking about what colors you want to use later on. We'll be using something called underglaze, so you'll have pretty much all the colors of the rainbow at your disposal. So if, part of your focal point, if that's one of your principles, you want to have color be part of it, jot that down so that way you kind of have that idea. And then as a friendly reminder, no letters, no numbers, no logos, and no copyright images. So as much as you probably want to have your name on there or use like the Nike symbol or anything like that, okay, don't do it. Okay, so this should be all your own original ideas and artwork.